Okay, so now we're at the numbers section of this section. And the reason why I wanted to break this video up, because the last video was getting a little long. And if you deal with ADHD, I can lose your attention. So I want to try to keep them short and concise, but sometimes I can't control it and they're just a little longer because it's just a little bit more information that I have to give. But let's finish up this section right here, more on numbers. And it says, when you type a large integer value, you might be tempted to use commas between groups of 3 digits, as in 42,000. This is not a legal integer in JavaScript, but it does mean something else, which is legal. So here, let's open up our console, because again, you want to play around with the code. If you don't play around with this code, you're never going to get the concepts. So you want to definitely play around with the codes. So when I come here and I click the right click, paste, and then I run it, as you can see, we get the same output as what we showed you in the example. Now let's explain. Now, well, let me go back up. Well, that's not what we expected at all. Because of the comma, JavaScript chose to treat 42,000 as pair of values. In fact, the console.log function can print any number of values as long as you separate them by commas. Notice that the values are separated by space when they are displayed. There go another word, displayed, because when we're using console.log, we're printing or displaying something. So notice here, now notice these are all primitive data types because they're not inside of a variable. These cannot be changed as if you want to change this 42 to a 43, you have to type 43. And I'll explain later on when we get to storing things in variables. So here we have numbers. We have a group of numbers, a sequence of numbers, but they're all separated by commas. And then we have console.log with numbers and strings. Now that's the thing with JavaScript. JavaScript is dynamic. You can have strings and numbers and different data types in the same variable. That's legal, or we will call this an array. We haven't got to arrays yet, but we have a group or array of things, of items. They're items, and you can have different data types in one array. You can't do that in Java, but we'll explain more as we go through the course, so I make sure it makes sense to you. But now when you see the output, it printed everything out for us, the numbers and the strings all together. Now, remember not to put commas or spaces in your integer. Now remember, it said that we can put spaces in there, right? So let's open that back up. Let's understand what that means. If I put it, what happened if I put a space there? So I come back to the console. Let me clear that out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste that back in. And then now what I want to do is, if I remove that comma and just put a space there, is it going to do, it says a syntax error. Why? Syntax is missing after the list argument. So which one is not right? We know that we have a space there between those two numbers. So as it reads it, it's giving me an error. So I need a comma right there in order for it to read it, for the compiler to read it. So now when I do it, it separates it because it sees that comma, and that comma gives us a space. I wanted you to see that because you may encounter this type of error and you may not understand why. So here we go. So type systems. Every programming language has a type system, which is the set of rules that determine how the languages deal with data of different types. Type system. Remember, I said earlier, we're going to be dealing with principles and rules. A type system is a set of rules. Now, in particular, How many values are divided up into different data types is one characteristic of a type system. We want to remember type system. In many programming languages, integers and floats are considered to be different data types. For example, in Python, 42 is of the int data type, while 42.0 is of the float data type. While JavaScript does not distinguish between floats and integers, at times we may wish to do so in our programs. For example, an inventory tracking program stores items and the numbers of each number in stock. Since a store cannot have 3.5 shirts in stock, the programmer makes the quantity of each item integer value as opposed to floats. So what does that mean? In JavaScript, we don't have floats. Here, I'm going to explain the 7 different primitive data types, because remember, primitive data types are immutable. You can't change them. And those 7 primitive data types are strings, numbers, booleans, null, undefined, symbols, and big int. Those are the 7. We're going to go over that more and more. I'm going to keep drilling it home to you till you get it. I'm going to keep refreshing your memory about it, because reviewing as we keep going forward, we have to constantly keep reviewing to make sure you understand what you've already learned and that you can retain it. Again, when you first go through this, you're only going to retain a small amount of it. The more you do it, the more you're going to improve, the more you're going to retain more information. So I'm going to constantly keep reviewing things that we've already gone over so that you can retain it. All right, so when discussing the difference between programming languages, the details of the type system are one of the main factors that programmers consider. There are other aspects of type system beyond just how values are categorized. We will explore these in future lessons. Now go ahead and check your understanding. Now we made it to the end of this section. Remember, the more you do, the more you improve. I'll see you in the next section.